I define grief as...
The grief is what you didn't know about them, what I didn't know
I see grief
about
as kind of
in this case,
a redefining
grief
of
is
your
actually a response to an event or to a
Whenever
trauma.
I think of grief, I think of loss, but also like a feeling of longing.
And similarly with grief is actually giving myself permission to feel everything I'm feeling. Broken.
To me, grief is a series of negative things that just like bring you
or
down.
some structure is gone from your current reality.
Sadness.
It felt like a crushing feeling, like a compressed and crushing and feeling, but at the same time it felt...
It's a heaviness, and then it's like heaviness comes spreading out and having to like let go.
What has been and will no longer be.
Change is inevitable, so grief is inevitable.
It's like a way to honor the changes.
I think it can also come in waves of joy and remembrance.
Grieving about ourselves, grieving about somebody we lost.
Sometimes it feels like
grieving about somebody we loved.
Something that I've never
grieving
met
for
before.
your lost innocence.
It's
grieving for the fact that I'll never be a child again.
The advice that you used to ignore, and now you hear yourself say to
storytelling.
your nephew.
To honor the lives that we live and the journeys that we take.
And it starts at the moment of your loss. And the journey is so multifaceted. I'm not sure it's a process that never ends. And in the beginning phases,
it comes in waves as well. It's not just like
are transported into,
and grief.
You're shifted dramatically into this new life.
Is the closest thing.
Yeah, I think I'm learning now what grief is.
To unexpressible love.
I mean, you have a sense of wonder when the moment is new and exciting.
But wonder seems to be more of a...
Definitely healing.
You have to get yourself ready.
It's, to me, is
and prepare your heart and keep your heart open.
State of hopefulness.
And then you can... and then you run into it. Boom. You're like, oh, in space.
So wonder can mean a lot of things. The unknown. And the imagination of the unknown.
A full body experience that's a total elation to the unknown.
What my mom said, wonder is a word for curiosity.
Finding joy about
questions. I literally wondered if my dad was left handed. I wonder how. All of that.
Where is right feelings that have lost their connection to whatever it is, the thing that I've lost, the person,
straight answers.
The dream. Wondered, like, what am I when I'm not a daughter?
That's the wonder of the world, right? Because we're all so interesting, and we all have so many things going on internally and externally that so many people don't understand or know that's happening.
Today is January 2nd, 2021. About a year ago, I was collecting stories for my senior project in my second-to-last semester at Naropa University. Earlier in the year, my maternal grandmother and paternal grandfather had passed away within a few months of each other. I decided to explore grief in my work as a way to form a relationship with it out of curiosity, pain, guilt, and even a desire to revisit past grievances that I hadn't fully processed yet. Often hearing the stories of others has been a source of both healing and inspiration to me, so I began interviewing and filming my friends within the Naropa and Colorado theater community about their experiences with grief and wonder. I had an instinct that these two themes had a kinship deeper than first realized. Before long, these collaborations evolved into performance art, songs, magic tricks, dances, and spontaneous storytelling of profound vulnerability and revelation. I was blown away and deeply grateful for these powerful artists in my world. As I collected stories, I felt as though I were racing to document every story, every moment. If I had waited to create wayfinding until my final semester, it would never exist. I didn't know that the world was about to change, but somewhere in some secret subconscious cavity of my creative heart, I was preparing. I didn't realize it until later, but in some cultures, the color white is related to death and mourning, the end of one life and the beginning of another. Grief and wonder are ever present in our lives, and the more we can normalize them and share in empathy, art, and community, the more we can learn to heal. I entitled this series Wayfinding because of a letter my grandpa wrote to me which I rediscovered after he died. Though I wish I had spent more time with him, the moments I did get to have with Bob were precious. He was a kindred spirit. Bob spent the last years of his life on San Juan Island, Washington, where I grew up, and my parents kindly agreed to share stories of their time with him. They will also be featured storytellers in an upcoming episode, sharing of their own relationships with grief and wonder.
Even after he had dementia, he went through a lot and was confused and everything, but always at his core, he was always Bob. He was that sweet, gentle, kind of mischievous, loving, super loving Bob. I mean, I think that was at the core of Bob always, was that super loving, caring person.
Yeah, like a little boy in a way, kind of a boy.
He always had projects, and as he had more and more dementia, he was super, super focused on these projects, like almost obsessively. That was his way of, I don't know if it was his way of dealing with it or just the way of filling up his life, but outdoor projects in the garden, in the landscape. And every time I'd come to visit him, he would explain to me in great detail what he was working on, and how he was moving this dirt over here and putting all these rocks here, and then but then every time I'd come, it had changed. He had shifted to another project, but he should talk about that.
He would kind of forget the next day. He would restart how he thought about it. He wanted to know that he was contributing and useful, like had a place. His existence has some kind of meaning, he was sort of struggling to find that. There was that one, he had a couple funny projects where you'd get obsessed with bringing out a certain quality, like scraping off that one piece of bedrock and revealing it. But then he wanted to cover it with blue stones. And so we'd take him out. Sean and I took him out for lunch a lot, and we'd try to go to beaches where there were blue stones, and we'd pick up little blue stones to bring home and add to his pile. And at a certain point, he couldn't walk out on the beach, right, because his stability was dangerous, and we didn't want him to fall and break a bone or something. So he would just stand up on the edge where the cars parked, and John and I would go out and fill our pockets with rocks and bring back a few blue stones, and add them to his pile. At one point, he started burying the blue rocks. He was really confused. He wanted more blue rocks, but he was burying them. So it was it's a different reality. There's no logic. You just have to go with the moment.
Yeah, it seemed like he got many, many loads of soil brought in, just to kind of keep him happy, Yeah. Now they didn't really need it. They just brought piles of soil in all the time.
Yeah.
To keep his.
A lot of expensive soil.
But he was out there, practically every day working.
Oh yeah.
And even the last week.
2 days.
2 days beforehand, he was digging or something.
So he always worked out ways to dig as his body changed. He reinvented how to use his body to move dirt. So he would just get little bits of dirt on the shovel and then carry that and put it in a little cart or something.
I received this a while ago and I read it, and then shortly after Bob died, I started thinking about my senior project, and then I was in a voice lesson with Mariana, and we did this exercise where she asked me to kind of draw our practice for the day, what I wanted to do vocally. So it's kind of abstract, but at the middle of the page I wrote the word wonder. And I'd already been doing these short films about grief, and so I decided to combine them. And then later I happened upon this letter, and it's incredibly serendipitous and magical, because you'll see. I'm going to read it out loud to you now. If I wrote down more often the musings about wayfinding, my magic word, it might become self-defined, best to let it stand on its own lexicon. For me, it is a code word for discover, wonder, create. The first 90 years were filled with knowing and doing. There were hints along the way, glimpses of the freedom of wayfinding that created a yearning. And now, having done 3 years following Charity's presence leaving us, wayfinding is naturally defining itself. The notion of hermitage has taken on a material reality, and I am freely wayfinding. I see glimpses of you along the pathway. Perhaps we will meet there now and then. Bob.
I think because I was his son that I blocked certain things out, like certain perceptions. And the letter is one of those things that reminds you. Part of grief is never feeling like you knew the person who passed well enough. Mm-hmm. Like there were hidden parts of them that you wish that you had space for when they were alive,
Yes.
And I know Shannon's going through that, remembering parts of her mom. And you think about her mom and a lot of things we don't know about her childhood, and what she experienced in life. And anyway, the Wayfinder is makes me wish that Bob and I had more of a poetic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because what I was thinking when you were reading that letter out loud, that it was sort of similar to me finding all those letters from my mom. Because it's sort of a letter that Tom had never seen before. So it's almost like bringing that person back to life for just a moment.
Up in what was your room, there's a drawing he made while he was in Paris. And I was just looking at that a few days ago and thinking, he really dreamed of being an artist. Mm-hmm. And that's why he encouraged us kids to be creative. But I think he was a little bit afraid. I think he he didn't fully commit, you know, to going over to being fully an artist. And I think it's partly because he needed to be grounded, take care of charity, and you know, pay the bills. And but I think there was a part of him that could have been a poet or a painter or a sculptor that he kept in reserve a little bit. But I think that was just part of his existence, you know, always dreaming and always encouraging other people to dream.
He wasn't like a big artist, you know, like showing in galleries and things like that, but he did it in little subtle ways all the time. In his letters, those little drawings, his letter, the way he wrote, you know, the poetry, he loved poetry. But also the gardens that he created, you know, just with such meticulous care and love. I mean, he just loved doing it. And, you know, at his home in Kirkland, you know, the little, all the spaces that he created, and then the house itself too. The house itself is definitely a work of art.
Yeah.
So
that was his obsession, and taking care of charity and working on that house.
Sometimes you're walking out in the night, and when you walk out in the night, everything's different. Your whole perception of space changes. And this is it's sweet to find a little reminder to ground you and let you know you're safe. So we'll put that there.